And from my own experience as a Nigerian, our own challenge wasn't specifically racial, and it's because of the unique demographic of Nigeria compared to South Africa.
Yeah.
In our
Yeah.
own case, our biggest challenges were tribal, and sometimes a class difference. Um,
Mm,
you as someone coming from a poorer background or a poorer social class, you have a constant suspicion of the rich. The rich also have a constant suspicion of the poor. I believe that if we are going to go into entrepreneurship as a solution, and we shouldn't just tell people it's rosy, don't worry, you're not getting a job. It's going to be nice. You're going to just, start selling and people will come to you. Just have a very brilliant idea. You can have the most brilliant idea and not a single person wants to buy from you. They tell you how beautiful it is. It's so brilliant.
Yeah.
It's
They care for you.
wow,
They
you are
encourage
doing so much. And yet nobody is buying. So you need to then commit time to saying, why are these people not buying? How do I overcome this hurdle as an entrepreneur and get my products in the hands of paying customers? That's a journey that will cost you time, will cost you your intellect, will cost you a lot of things. It will even cost you relationships. People would probably wanted to spend time with you and chill with you, that they themselves are still just, not doing anything, would hate you for the idea of, you don't have time for them now. Oh, you're now proud, and so you're now better than us. There are so many reasons why entrepreneurship is a terrible choice. It's a terrible choice, but you have two other more terrible choices of what to do. Either you give up some of your identity and go into, I don't want to say the word licking of behinds, social climbing, and or you go into outright violent fights. So there's none of the options you will have as a poor black person or a struggling black person that will be beautiful. It's going to be messy. It's a messy journey, and we need to also prepare ourselves to be kind to ourselves in those periods, because that's another thing we as Africans lack, the ability to be kind to ourselves while going through all of this mess. We will
yeah.
fight along that road. A
Mm,
lot of people are
It's the hunger.
it's the hunger,
It's the
right?
hunger.
Yeah. Like people said hurtful things to me when I was starting out, and I remember some of them to today. And sometimes I also said hurtful things to people because I was frustrated, I was angry, I was hungry also, right? So,
yeah.
and who attacked me along the way. There were people who clearly told me that, listen, I don't think you're going to succeed,
Yeah, of course.
and things like that. So, but do I now continue? I'm not going to do anything just to show them. I'm not going to do anything just because I want to get back at them. Some of them still came back to me and then asked me, okay, I need to learn something from you. I'm not
Mm,
now going to look at them and say, I'm going to
You
show
remember?
you. And that's one of the reasons why we get called. Yeah, do you remember what you said to me that
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons, because we want some kind of payback
Yeah. No, but
for
like,
people who are suffering like us.
Marabe,
People who are suffering like us.
no, but like, if you have not had any kind of revenge in your life, you crave it.
I don't know whether you think yes as them, but I feel like that's another reason, because I know we're talking about why is the African community not still growing. It's because we want
yeah.
so much payback, even amongst ourselves.
Yeah. No,
Yeah. But I wanna ask this, right? Like you talk about entrepreneurship being like, well, the better devil, the way you say that,
Mm. Yeah.
but here's something else, and maybe you would agree with me. Having like Nigerian friends and being South African, what I also realize is the fact that in South Africa we have a more job, like we are more job focused more
Yeah.
than we are creating job focused, right? And I think it also goes back to like to education, because I mean, studying, there are people that study entrepreneurship in
Yeah.
universities, but the question that I always ask, when you are done, are you a
Are you
an
able to start
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Can I quickly
you know what
respond
I
to that?
mean?
Can I quickly respond
You
to
know,
that?
you're studying business management. When you're done, what happens? You know what I mean? And I've seen it also in my university days, where I studied journalism, and all I've heard throughout my university days was, when you are done and you work for this organization as a journalist, when you work for this organization, or when you work in this department, or when you are writing about these type of stories, or this, no one said, when you start your own media company, when
Yeah.
you start your own, you get what I mean? So
Yeah.
how do you then, and because you do a lot of work with young people, what conversations are you having to say, do not only look at being employed by someone, you know, start looking at you employing someone, start looking at creating something for yourself. How do we as South Africans then move from that point? Because I mean, with a lot of my Nigerian friends also, whenever you having conversations, sometimes you would hear how it's like they have a hustler's mentality, if I should put it
Yeah.
that way. You know what I mean? Like they have a hustler's mentality, like, because I don't think it was instilled in them to like just look for a job, and if you don't look for a job, then that's it. But in South Africa, it looks as if you are unemployed, if someone doesn't say this is your employment letter, it is done for you, there's nothing else you can do, type of thing.
Okay. So I think maybe let's take it back to our history, and I'll tell you why I think um, things are happening the way that they're happening, and then I will touch on the kind of conversations I have with kids.
Yeah.
So when we remember during that time, we were not allowed into certain jobs. You know, we're not allowed into certain careers. So immediately they were like, we're pulling the plug off. What happened was a lot of South Africans went to school. And immediately after school, those South Africans got jobs, right?
Mm.
And we're like, this education thing is working. Education is the key to success, right? It
Yeah,
worked
yeah.
because there was a gap in the market. Because certain places and certain positions that were reserved for certain people were now being filled by, other people. And then there was like sort of some kind of something to look forward to. People will graduate and get a job like that. People will graduate and get a job like that. And we're like, this is working. Pump more children into varsities. Let them go to varsity and then, whoops, they get a job, right? But now
Yeah.
we're looking at the statistics, the number of people that are in school that are graduating and don't have jobs, because those jobs have been saturated. I mean, between 1994 and 2022, there's a lot of people that we pumped into, and that is because they were really we did not focus so much on job creation. It was like filling spaces that were already empty. So what is now happening is we're actually seeing that there's that exhaustion in the systems, in the idea of jobs, and now we're now starting to rethink. I think a lot of people now are actually rethinking and looking at entrepreneurship as a solution now than they did back then. Because back then, what do you need a business for when you can just go in, be a HR, it's naming HR business partner. The next thing, everyone in your family is now working at the same company. You know, the whole charades. You look at even how we also pumped into politics, and a number of parties were formed. A lot of people were now being, I mean, look at people who are not even qualified to be Minister of Finance, were there, Minister of Finance, Minister of Education. What do they know about education? They know nothing, but they're there. So it was just filling positions that were really empty. Now there's saturation and we cannot move on. How do we move on from that mindset into trying to create? And that's the thing. And I remember when I went to an incubator for the first time, I remember telling my mentor that I am not really creating employment isn't particularly my thing. I don't think that I'm going into the business space to create employment. Even
Yeah.
with how I'm running my programs, I always have contracts with people who are already running their things to come in and actually add value into what I'm already doing. I don't want employees. And part of it could be because I really don't know how to deal with employees. I really just want people who are going to be proactive. I'm going to tell you, okay, this is the goal. Come in. I saw the work that you're doing. This is what I need from you. And then you just really make it your own thing and just create. So when we're looking at entrepreneurship, we need to then say, what is the goal for entrepreneurship? Are we solving problems that are in the country right now? What problems are there? And what business interventions do we need to actually solve those problems? Are we doing this to solve problems of just poverty, unemployment, or we're doing this to actually better the world? And you can have one business that does everything, right? But then some businesses, when you look at some of these grants that people receive, some businesses that get grants are actually given grants on the idea that they're going to create employment. We do not need more employees in South Africa. We need people who are innovative, people who can think outside what is happening. Because when we look at even the stats in terms of careers and stuff like that, there's still going to be more cut-offs. There's a lot of careers that are going to be replaced by artificial intelligence and all of these other things. So when we look at entrepreneurship, I think I would like for us to actually broaden the whole concept and say, really, why are we thinking about it and why are we thinking about it in the way that we're thinking about it? I recently included entrepreneurship as part of what I want the kids to learn. But how we then approached the learning of entrepreneurship was in 2019 when we first launched. This is
Yeah.
what I got them doing. So I got them basically thinking about, because I was in Denelton. So I'm like, what is happening in our world currently? And understanding agriculture and food systems is part of the life skills that are, the courses that are in the life skills program. That we look at, okay, so what is happening in terms of nutrition? How do we then understand the food systems? How do we understand the food that we eat? Because part of the reasons why South Africa is in poverty right now and we depend on other nations is because we have relinquished the ability to produce our own seeds. So we depend on other people for our own sustenance. And anyone that can control your food controls the whole nation. So the idea
Yeah.
now is thinking about those kind of things. How do we create our own food? How do we make our own food? Why is it important that we make our own food? And then several businesses can come out of that. We look at then all these let's unsmoke South Africa and stuff like that. There's a little project we ran in 2019 where we got kids picking up cigarette butts. And then they go to the internet and start researching what they can actually do with cigarette butts, recycle them and actually sell them now, sell those little parcels in the community. And that's how you inspire them. Look at what is happening in the community. Oh, there's a lot of trash. Okay, let's pick up the trash. What can we do with this particular plastic? What can we do with that particular plastic? What products can we make out of this? Who's going to buy? Are people even thinking about buying these kind of things? What kind of education or what kind of seminars do we need to hold to educate people about these kind of things so they can actually start having an interest in buying those kind of products? So when we have those kind of conversations, I really like to make things as practical as possible. So when we're doing let's understand agriculture and food systems, let us go to farms. Let us see what they're doing. What can
Yeah.
we borrow from that we can actually bring into our society and actually then how can we earn from that? And part of it also then is financial literacy, because you cannot then have a sustainable business or a sustainable life in general without understanding how to do your financial planning. And that's basically some of the things that I actually include in that life skills program to help kids actually have that well-rounded experience of how do I navigate money? How do I talk about money? How do I handle money? How do I have conversations about money? Do I even know how to file my own tax returns? What does it mean? I was telling him the other day that I actually learned in the 2019 what
Yeah.
pay as you earn means. And let me tell you, I remember there was a lesson in EMS in my grade 5, where they were teaching us different kinds of VAT, taxes, and all of those other things. I never
Yeah.
really knew what it meant until I started earning on commission. When I earned this much commission, they start taking a huge chunk out of my money. I'm like, but what with this? Why are you deducting so much from my? I'm like, pay as you earn. The more you earn, the more you pay. I'm like, but this is not what they told me in school. They didn't explain it. So I think it's
Yeah.
just making education practical, so that when
Mm.
kids move into the real world, then they have that tangible knowledge to say, look, I don't just know this, because I mean, I could describe pay as you earn. I knew what it was. I could write it in exams. But did I know the practical application of pay as you earn? I didn't. And that's basically what I do with the kids. Whatever you learn in school, this is where it actually applies in life. And that's basically, I think, a long summary of it.
Mhm. Well, I think I agree a lot with the practical, like bringing things to practice. Like, but I'm going to speak to the Nigerian. You made some statements that maybe Nigerians were not trained in a certain way. That's why we are the way we are now, or something like that. I
Yeah.
think generally that of course, there are different ways to classify people, but there's a kind of classification I have for people, and which is that there are people who they are, how will I put it? They like to see things get to the end, to finish, they want everything to get to the tipping point before they start to change or start to do things differently. For example, growing up as kids, I was the kind of child who, would say um, how much of how much food is in the house, and
Yeah.
how do we manage it? What are the parents saying about how we eat, right? And do we need to ration our food and things like that? Because of course we're poor. We need to consider the possibility that things run out, right?
True.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's one kind of person. People will consider the possibility that things run out, and they are driven then by that fear or that awareness, so that they conserve, so that they innovate, so that they create, right?
Yeah.
And then there are the other group of people, second group of people, who don't by default consider that things run out. But the truth is, whether they consider it or not, things run out.
Yeah.
And this same cycle that Tumi described it has played out in Nigeria. When my parents graduated from school, when they
Yeah.
graduated from school, most of them got jobs, like automatically. Some had two job offers, three job offers. The jobs were flowing. And that was because the economy had just recently been handed over to Nigerians by the British government. We were also under colonial rule for years before that. So
Yeah.
the economy had just recently been handed over, and there was a lot of you know, jobs now. There were vacancies, places where they were not allowed to work before, where now they had to fill those spaces because the British are gone. So now there was a lot of jobs. In fact, all of them believe, even till now, some of our parents, I struggled explaining to my parents that I want to be a writer and I'm not going to get a job anymore. I'm tired of searching for jobs. They would still recommend to me at that stage that
Yeah.
no, maybe you should still try. They'll send me the contacts of people they may know. I'll tell my mom and dad then that, listen, I've already made up my mind at this point. I'm tired of the rejections. This is the path
Yeah.
I'm. So it took a while for them to actually wrap their heads around the idea that an adult can live their lives based on entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
because that level of risk is not something they are used to. I was also not used to it. I'm still not used to it. But I know that that is what I have. And like I said, there are two groups of people: those who believe that things run out and they then let that dictate how they behave, and those who don't believe that things run out, or they don't pay attention to it, and they always assume that they want to see it finish first. Let's see it
Yeah.
finish first, then we'll start doing things about it. So they keep, so it's like the employment thing. Our own economy also believed that it will be there forever. I mean, look at all these our children getting jobs immediately after school.
Yeah,
It's working.
it's working.
They
Yeah.
never looked at a saturation point.
Yeah.
They never looked at the possibility of a saturation point. So they kept, consuming and dipping into the spaces, taking whatever they could, and not expanding or scaling up, or creating more jobs. They were not expanding. They were just stuffing the places with more employees. They were not looking to replicate more of these spaces where they were getting the jobs. So
Mm,
even even employment actually has the entrepreneurial aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
So while people were getting into jobs, they were not particularly thinking like their employers.
Mm.
They were not seeing their role in the
Yes.
sustenance of the jobs. Many will go into jobs and be responsible with their time at the job.
Mm.
They show up whenever they want to show up. They don't commit so much to the
Especially
learning.
after payday.
They would even, yeah, and then some employers would pay people to go abroad to learn. Some will run away from there and never go back to the jobs that sponsored them to go abroad to learn. Some would, because the paycheck is good, they refuse to improve their skill sets. And so the employer cannot say, oh, I have now a very great employee who can start another version of this thing somewhere else. They can't even imagine it, because this employee is not even improving enough to be able to do that.
yeah.
So I'm not saying employment will be phased out. I don't believe in such things. I believe rather that the entrepreneurial spirit is something that must be adopted even by employees.
Yeah.
As you currently have a job, how are you looking to make that your job valuable enough to contain even more people like yourself?
How are you adding value?
How are you adding value to it? If your employer says this is our agenda, how much of the agenda do you commit yourself to? Or you feel like because there's so much salaries being paid, it's not going to run out. Or your employer is not having problems with paying salaries. That is where then the problems now start, when people don't believe that things run out. So the Nigerian case, after a while, our parents also realized, or well, our own generation, we realized our parents that were already in the jobs, they were not dying. They're still there in the jobs. There are no new jobs. There are no new
They're not
jobs. They are
dying.
not dying out and being replaced. They are living long lives. And it's a good thing, right? But it means that the jobs are saturated, right? So, and we can't tell them now you must die so that we have jobs. No. Or you must just find a way. We can't tell them that. So now we have to then start figuring out, what do we do? This
Yeah.
our parents will not help us. The
Mm.
government is not going to help us.
Yeah.
So most of us actually went into entrepreneurship from a place of desperation.
Yeah.
It's not
Oh,
because that was our initial plan.
Yeah.
It's not because that was how we were trained. It's because we had no
There are
choice.
no opportunities.
There were no opportunities and we had no choice. We started to get that message clearly, that you have no choice. Nobody is going to give you. And
yeah.
our government continues to reinforce that into our heads, that nobody is going to give you what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you keep listening to that, after a while, you as a reasonable adult, you start to adjust accordingly.
That
One
is true.
problem you mentioned is that the government here still tells people we're going to do things for you. Meanwhile, they are
Yeah.
lying. Meanwhile, they are lying. Maybe they'll do it for a few people. Maybe
No, they do it before elections.
or they do
Before
it before
elections,
elections. They
they
do
fix
it
things.
they fix some things quickly
Yeah.
and do some small things. they are not telling people the truth that we're only doing it in these small proportions. They make you feel like, I mean, you have 50 something million people, I don't know the exact numbers, or 60 million in South Africa, and a politician is telling you he's going to create 150,000 jobs.
How?
Even if he actually achieves that 150,000 jobs, let's even say he achieves it,
How many people are
how
unemployed in the
many
country?
people are unemployed? There are still
35%.
millions of
Yeah,
people that are unattended. The
true.
politician's messaging is so that you elect him. It's not because he actually practically wants to solve issues with the people's help.
Hmm.
So, and the people also believe that the jobs are not supposed to run out. They're
Mm.
supposed to keep being created.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and our politicians have a job to create the jobs for us.
Mm.
Politicians are not entrepreneurs. They can, I mean,
Very sad.
except you want them to just open up government jobs that have nothing to do. And that's probably why we're expanding government jobs, civil service. Even in Nigeria, there are states that rely largely on civil service.
Yeah.
Like that's all their revenue. That's all the state revenue, taxing civil servants. Like the government pays you a salary and then takes out of the money they paid you to keep again for the next salary. That's not
Yeah.
a sustainable system. So so what I'm saying essentially is this, that desperation is probably one of the mental shocks that started to cause many Nigerians to go into entrepreneurship.
Mm.
South Africa has a choice. While you are not yet at the stage of the desperation,
Ah, we are already.
no, we are already there. But I'm
Yeah.
telling you that there's still more desperation.
There has more to come.
There's more because I'm sure my parents, when they also, after the first few people who had stopped getting jobs, after the first few people that didn't get jobs in their generation, they must have felt, it's really desperate now. Some people, my friend didn't get a job, but I had like 3 offers now. So, but there are still like a few people that are not getting jobs. So they too must have felt like that's desperation. They still had constant electricity. They still had rail systems working. They still had transit to work that was paid by their employers. They had all of these privileges that an average South African would say they have today. So when I say that there's still desperation beyond the desperation South Africa is right now, I am saying it based on our own experience as Nigerians. We got to the worst desperation. And that is forcing us now to create.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's either we tell people that we start to sensitize ourselves that there's a level of desperation that's still more than where we are currently. And we have a choice either to start um, adopting entrepreneurial mindset, even as employees.
Mm.
And as people who are still struggling, we have a choice to start adopting job creation and a venturing spirit. We have a choice to do that now, or we will be pushed by extreme circumstances, very extreme circumstances that we will not even have a choice. Because now the large number of Nigerians are not even complaining about the government anymore. That's why protests are not really a common thing in Nigeria. It's not because people do not want to protest. It's because there's no point.
Yeah.
Even the government doesn't know what to do anymore. And it's clear they don't know what to do. So who are you complaining to? Yeah, you still have the idea that maybe our government knows what to do, they just don't want to do it. No, they just don't want to do it. They are in bed with the evil oppressors. We don't have evil oppressors that our politicians are in bed with. We just know that there's a desperate circumstance where our politicians, how do you manage 200 million people when there's a large percentage of them without jobs? 200
No, but
million.
how you manage that, you do the same thing as the US. The US has a large population, right?
Mm.
They're pillaging other countries to
Yeah,
support.
so we should go and
So
pillage other
let's find
countries.
somebody to pillage also. No, but just to add on what you were saying, I think another factor that we may not even have mentioned as factors to why we are in the state that we are in, above just mindset, is also the leadership. What kind of leadership? What
Yeah.
kind of spaces do we operate in? There was a time we went to shop, went to this place here, Woolworths, and I had picked, was it a cucumber, babe?
I can't remember.
And I had picked a cucumber, right? It was slightly open.
Oh, okay.
And the lady at the till was like, "No, you have to return it. We need to give you a whole one that's properly closed." I'm like, "No, I don't mind. I can take it home. It looks fine." She's like, "No, they won't allow you to take it out." And as we were walking down from Woolworths coming home, we started having this conversation about how even when we go into these jobs, we do not even know what the philosophy of these companies are. We do not, like, we're not choosing, and this is something that I've actually realized with companies in the US. People actually go and seek employment in places whose philosophy aligns with them. They understand the basic philosophy of that company. They understand why the company runs the way that it runs. You go to any employee there, they will tell you, "Oh, the reason why we don't do this is because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the store policies." That one did not even understand there are store policies that were put in place, or if you go out with maybe broken cucumber out of the store and mala, you come back and sue us. We don't want that. That's why we want to make sure that everything that you have is well packaged. She doesn't even understand that. So it's that we, first of all, don't have exemplary leadership, and we don't even know how to lead ourselves. We do not understand the things that we put. We just go in there for the money. And that's why when he was mentioning the idea that people just go in, look at the week of payday. Even the teachers from school, when we went to school, we know when it's payday. We know how they behave. So it's just that thing of not knowing why you are there and why you're doing the things that you're doing. You're just there for the money because that's basically what you were told. You would see, go to school, get a job, get the money. But do you really understand what this company stands for? And also, there are different kinds of entrepreneurs that are the kind of entrepreneurs that he was mentioning. And there are just people who know, all right, this thing is not for me. This job thing, when I tell him about the kind of jobs that I've had, the number of jobs, there were years where I would work with 7 different companies in just 1 year because I was just moving from company to company, to company, because really being in formal employment really was just it. And then, and it's just some of those things. But also, I feel like our people, adding on to the idea that we go into employment just for the money, we then do not, we're not really equipped with skills to identify, gaps even in the workplaces that we work in. When you go into a company like ShopRite, for instance,
Yeah.
there are places like that in the US as well where you actually see. I mean, I visited a farm in the US where the employees are actually the suppliers of some of the products that are sold in the farm. So these people have a blueberry farm, right? Some of the employees are blueberry farmers themselves. When this actual farm that they work at has maybe a deficit, they're trying to supply it to a certain market and they don't have the numbers, their employees actually supply from their own farms. I visited an apple farm also, and it's just like that. You go to any restaurant here in South Africa, the employees are just concerned about their hourly rate. They don't know where these people are getting the lettuce. They don't know where these people are getting the cucumbers from. They don't know where the people are getting their tomatoes from. Who are the farmers that are supplying the people, the restaurant that you work for? Could you actually save your employer money by basically working, having your own farm and actually supplying them? And because there are such places, I spoke to one of the companies here at Hetfield. It's a restaurant. I was trying to supply potatoes to them, and well, the deal fell off somehow. But you can see that these people are actually constantly looking for business. But the employees are not thinking about such things. The employees are not saying, "How can I add value to my employer?" All we were looking for is just give me my salary, let me go. And that's why there is no that thing of just going an extra mile and actually, being part of the company culture. You are not even part of the company. You that's why you can easily be replaced like that.
And I think on one side also, it also ties into how then employees don't, um, I don't know how to put it. Let me think. Employers who see an exploitative employee will also treat you exploitatively. It's a two-way street. And usually the problem with most challenges in our world is who makes the first move. Is it the hen or is it the hen that lays the egg, or is it the egg that becomes the hen? We always have that challenge. So is it the employer who needs to stop exploiting their employees so that the employees can stop exploiting their employers, and vice versa? So that question is where, even with every other thing we've discussed today, it's always still about that. Who makes the first move? Who stops the cycle? Who breaks the cycle? So
Yeah.
is it government that needs to come clean with South Africans
And say this
and
are the
say
problems.
these are the problems, we want to work with you
But-
to solve these problems, but these are the challenges? Or is it the people that need to say, okay, the government is struggling in so and so ways to give us so and so things, let us start doing or treating our work in this way, let's start orienting ourselves. Who does the first thing? um or is it something that, is it possible for everyone to do it at the same time?
Yeah.
Because, and usually the challenge most of the time is that while you say, if you say one person, let's all do it at the same time, will you be able to take your eyes away from what you see as the other person's problem while you fix yours? Is it possible? Because, for example, if let's say we have an employer and employee situation, and the employer says, I'm going to do better, I'm going to give my employee all the skills and training required to,
Do a good
do
job.
a good job and be better and be entrepreneurial, and but then you still see this employee
Yeah.
stealing from you.
Yeah. Yo, babe.
It's going to definitely hurt you, right? It's going to make your life
That happens a
miserable.
lot.
But now let's flip the scenario. You as an employee, you come into a company, you start to give your time. You start to try to make good and learn the process. You even start your own farm. Let's use that example and say, oh, I want to supply to the company. The day you mention it
Yeah.
to your boss that, oh, I have a farm, the boss says, oh, I'm going to give you more hours. Seems you have a lot of time on your hands. I'm going to give you more hours. I'm not increasing your pay, but
Yeah.
I'm going to increase your hours because I can
You
see
have time to
you have
do
time to
other
be doing
things.
your own farms, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very
Yeah.
it's a paradox, or how do I put it? And I think that everyone needs to consider life that way. For us to even start moving out of poverty, we need to see the stalemate at which we all are. We are in stalemate situations, whether it's the racial issue, who moves first?
Yeah.
Whether it's politics, who moves first? Whether
Yeah.
it's the employer-employee situation, we are in stalemates. And we need to then ask ourselves, what do you do in a stalemate? What do you do in it's like if you play chess, what do you do in a stalemate? Well, most of the time you just clear out the board and start afresh. Because that means
We
nobody.
need to clear out the board.
How do you clear out the board stalemate? I don't have the answers to that. I don't
But the
pretend
thing
to have an
about
answer.
it, we have seen, and I think this is the thing that we're not doing well as Africans. We're not learning from other nations.
Mm.
The reason why you guys are where you are is because you guys got your independence before us, and that's independence in quotes. You got it before us, and we saw how you run down your country. We are heading in the same direction. Had we looked at Nigeria and we're like, we don't want to be like that. What processes can we put in place not to be like Nigeria? We're not learning. There's China. That was almost where Africa was at some point. There are things they did. How did they do the things that they did? What could we have learned from their journey that could have prevented this constant pillaging of our natural resources?
But can I quickly add something to that? You see, you gave two examples of two different economies, one that succeeded and one
And one
that
that
didn't
failed.
that failed, right?
Yeah.
Now, one of when I have done a number of years of research, and usually we're one of the things in research is that we look at where people have missed a step, where they failed, and then we look at also those who have succeeded, and we try to build new ideas or concepts or theories from that.
And that would work for that
Now,
particular demographic, isn't it?
that will work for a particular demographic. But yeah, the problem is if you despise those who failed, you will not include them in your research. You would disregard them. You would discard failure. And we actually have a culture of disregarding failure in Africa. We look at people who have failed and we think they cannot be motivational
We're
speakers.
better than them.
You can't come to speak to me about entrepreneurship if you've never succeeded at it, that kind of philosophy. This person has failed at entrepreneurship, so probably they have all of the
They've learned
information.
something.
They've learned something from all of those failures, and you will do well to listen to them. Now, on the other hand, we look at those who have succeeded and we worship them. And that also makes it impossible to learn from them. Because when they now come to us and say, do things this way, we jump, we take it hook, line, and sinker. We do not contextualize that even though this person did things this way and it worked for him that way, there are some particular things, assumptions that were in play that made sure that this person succeeded in that circumstance. That's why I particularly am very careful of motivational speakers, because they come to you telling you laws about the laws of success, as if when they were going through those problems, they actually had those laws playing out in their head. They didn't. In retrospect, they look back and say, oh, this was what happened that made this success happen for me. But while they were in it, they were probably just scrambling like every one of us. And because of that, you can't then come to someone and tell them to duplicate your workbook or your playbook. It would be detrimental to that person. You can share with them and say, listen, these are some of the things I noticed about my success, and what worked for me. And you can then try to translate that to your own context. So if we are going to learn from each other, those who have succeeded have to have the humility to say or to clearly state how their process was, and not to force their training on someone else. It takes a lot of it's hard work also, but it can be done. And those who are learning as well, they must not despise those who have failed.
Yeah.
They must not despise those who have failed in the process of trying to do what they also did. Because I know some of my mentors are not even entrepreneurs, or they can't even, they've not lived my life. I am an entrepreneur. Some of my mentors are, people who have also been in employment. They are scared of entrepreneurship because they've tried it, they've struggled with it. I'm even the one that guides some of them in the little ventures they do. So there's that symbiotic relationship that needs to exist between those who are succeeding in one area and those who are failing in another area. There has to be a synergy of failure and success for us to then move forward. So we can't despise either of them, either the failure or the success, but we need to be clear why. Why did it happen this way? Why did
Why did they fail?
Yeah.
I think that was a cute stuff.
Thank you.
I think that, well, I'm gonna ask the last question anyway. What I wanted to ask actually is, and I like the fact that you're talking about learning, right? Because, and you're right, we have a tendency as, I don't know if I should say as Black people, not to learn from other countries or other success stories, right? But now here's someone who has been able to get employment in a South Africa where unemployment is so high, or in Nigeria where unemployment is so high. And now our issue is no longer this person being unemployed, but our issue is this person not being able to either use their work or the money that they get to multiply it and
Mm,
create wealth for themselves. You know what I mean? So my
mm,
question is, how do we as Black people get to a point of multiplying the money that we get from our employers? You know what I mean? How do you move from, yes, I'm getting paid every month, but
mm.
your money is not, you not
Not doing.
it's like you're hoping that one day you're going to hit the lottery and actually become um, rich, because you're not going to get rich by just going to work every day and actually getting
Mm.
paid. You know what I mean? So, how do we move to a place where we are able to multiply our money as Black people and actually be able to, create wealth and be able to create trust funds for our kids? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think I'll first put a disclaimer that I honestly also I'm still on that journey because there's something that happens to most of us when we come out of different stages of poverty. When you first move out of
Yeah.
I don't have anything coming in to now I have something coming in, you want to save a lot of your money.
Yeah.
You are afraid of everything.
Hmm.
Even if an idea comes to you now that I need to do
Mm,
so, so, and so, I need to maybe start a small farm. I need to do maybe start selling something on the side. You look at your
Okay. I think
savings.
let's.
So as I was saying that you would struggle in that first period to take risks because everything now is risky with money. You don't
mm,
want to use your savings now and start a venture when your rent is due.
Mm.
You don't want to
yeah.
take your money and start building a house when you know your car insurance is due. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we have a struggle on how to multitask our money, how to use our
Send it
money.
to work.
Yeah, you send it to work while you have things that actually want to collect it from you. That's the real challenge. So,
Yeah.
and I think that that's something everyone will need to discover what works for them on that part. But one of the
Mm,
biggest things we must not lose is the ability to aspire for things. Not aspire for more money particularly, but to aspire for new ventures.
yeah.
Um, as much as I am a content writer, I also started working on a startup that's focused on housing finance in Africa. And my PhD is it's a real estate PhD. I know that that's supposed to be another venture that I invest some of my time and resources into. But I know that I can't risk just like taking all of my savings, pumping it into it, getting employees, rushing into it, and seeing how it goes. I know I can't do that. So what
Yeah.
I've been doing is to commit some time regularly, maybe once a week, once a month, to build that part of my business or that part of my work as a separate entity. So there's a network of people that know me as a writer and content developer, but there's a different network I am working on that knows my work as a real estate researcher. And those are the people I'm targeting to now sell that skill or service to.
Mm,
So of course, then I will need to, expend some resources to make that also still stay alive. Maybe sometimes I pay someone to do something quickly for me. I outsource some of my work and then pay for other people to do part of the work for me so that I can still do my other job, right? But that multitasking is going to tell on me in some way. It's either going to eat into my time, my free time, with friends and family, or I'm going to have to pay somebody to save that time. Remember, all of what we are doing is about time and how much resources we have to enjoy the life we actually live. So what we are actually sacrificing when we say we want another venture or another thing is my resources, my time with family and friends, my money that I've saved up, my comforts. I'm sacrificing that as well. So all of those things, we now need to be able to measure it. How much of this can I put aside without risking everything? But
Yeah.
calculated risks. Calculated risks. How much of risks can I take on this venture right now, and I'm not going to die? So, and I'm not going to hurt people in the process that are important to me. Sometimes we will still hurt people in the process because maybe, for example, you and your partner are in a relationship, and one day you wake up and find out that your partner has gone to buy a baki.
I was taking a loan.
Has taken a loan. Yeah, like
both your money.
both of your monies, and you're angry, you're fighting them. But the truth is that they did it because of very good intentions. They wanted to venture out and do more. But it's not going to go out well with both of you. You're going to fight over it and stress yourself throughout that period.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
so Dami is speaking to you from a place of an entrepreneur, right? Looking at finances and how to expand money. So if you're looking at it from an individual perspective, is because what I see a lot, why people don't venture into how do I multiply my money? The biggest thing, first of all, is fear. The other thing, not fully understanding their money, not fully understanding options that are there for them to actually be able to multiply their money, and just the staunch refusal to learn. So those are 4 different clients that I've had. The one client is afraid because, first of all, I don't think that I can make a lot of money. I don't think that I am worthy of a lot of money. So that is a personal problem. And in order for us to be able to multiply money for ourselves and our families, we need to, first of all, understand ourselves as individuals. What are my limiting beliefs when it comes to expansion? What are my limiting beliefs when it comes to adding to what I have? Right? So that is a category of people that I work with. How do I get you through those limiting beliefs? How do I help you actually have a mindset that's going to allow you to actually now put into action the things that you can do? Because everyone can multiply their money. The problem is how, when, with what, right? And those questions then be answered first by understanding yourself, understanding your spending patterns, understanding your money, understanding your net worth as well. And when one understands their net worth, they're able to know, oh, this is how much I owe, right? This is how much I then have that I can spend on things. And with what I have, how much of what I have is fully committed? Are there avenues that I can actually reduce how much of my money is fully committed? And that is a process of financial planning that every individual has to go through and be able to then understand, how do I spend my money? Am I spending my money on things that are adding to myself, that is self-development? Are the things that I'm spending on also improving my money? Because you see, you have to spend money in order to make money. There's a category of people that are willing to learn, but are not willing to actually put their money because there are risks involved. Now that's when we move on to the investment part of financial planning, to say, let me use investments. Instead of me starting a venture like Damilola wants to start a venture, let me put my money in other people's businesses so I can then either earn dividends or earn an income from actually venture capitalists and all of these other kinds of investment. Of course, for a person who's not as rich as venture capitalists, we're looking at different kinds of investments. Now, in order for a person to be able to also find that, because the investment can be a good investment, but it may not be a right one for you. So one thing that Damilola and I have also had an understanding of is he is very risk averse when it comes to his investments. I'm that person that's going to just blow money on an investment. Like I'm really so people need to understand what kind of investors they are. When you understand what kind of an investor you are, then you know what kind of portfolios to invest your money in.
Yeah.
And that's the education that people then get through financial literacy to say, okay, what kind of investor am I? Am I risk averse? Am I a risk taker? Am I moderate? What kind of investor am I? And what kind of portfolios are there for people like me, right? And then maybe then you can then start with investment that way. But you cannot then fully transition into investment if you have not learned how to start saving. And the question people ask is, what am I saving for? If you do not see a need to start saving, then you cannot see a need to multiply your money. And the biggest deterrent to also people multiplying their money is the idea that, it's my money. And the reason why people don't even want to learn is it's my money. How would you know about managing my money than me? I'm the one that goes to work. The other part of it is the risk part of investment. That can sort of your risk profiling. Risk profiling is what we do when we're trying to assess what kind of an investor you are, right? That can help you sort of put your investment into perspective. But you also need certain risk lubricants to put in place. Things like retirement plans, especially for people who are middle to low income earners. What kind of a retirement plan am I going to have, right? And if we're looking at risk, there are products. Insurance companies have a lot of products that people can actually purchase to sort of lubricate the amount of risk, or to sort of help them sort of cushion the risk that they will be taking when they're trying to multiply their money. And also, just even besides the idea of just for you to multiply your money, you need to also have a plan to continue earning the income that you're earning, or increase the income that you're earning. And there are also insurance products for that. You saw when COVID started, when people were being retrenched, people who had retrenchment benefits in that time started earning from their retrenchment benefits, because they were paying them the same salary that the companies were paying them, because they started with retrenchment benefits early. So people need to understand, first of all, themselves, understand their money, and understand their circumstances. Because Damilola and I can both be earning 20,000 per month, but the responsibilities that he has financially and the responsibilities that I have financially are different. So my financial plan is going to differ from Damilola's own. And the problem in our community is that if it worked for Damilola, it can work for me. So
Yeah.
it's just putting the whole. I'm just trying to do a summary here so that we can sort of understand what it's not just about multiplying, but also because there are fears involved. How do I cushion those fears? How do I, make sure that there are people who are doing forex trading. They understand their risk profiling. They understand how the market works, and they are doing it. And there are people who have learned, right? They understand how the market works, but they still cannot make it in forex, because why am I risking my money? Because you do not even have the confidence in what you have learned, right? And I cannot overemphasize the idea that there are different kinds of investments for different kinds of people. There is no excuse for anyone to be sitting down with their money and saying, I don't know how to multiply. There are there are a lot. We cannot even exhaust there. Look, there are tailor-made investments. You can walk into an insurance company now and get investment product. You can go to an FSP and get, look, you can even curate your own. The idea is to continue learning and actually seek that knowledge. And obviously, there's now the part of it that needs therapy, which is the limiting beliefs that we have. Because I really believe that the people that have those limiting beliefs, even if they get all the information in the world, as long as they believe themselves, or they're not deserving of that money, they have this fear, they cannot even step out. Those are the ones that we send to, shrinks to say, well, fix my mind first, and then let me come and actually, because you cannot then edify your family when you still also are in that, they call it what, lack mentality, what is it?
Scarcity mentality.
That one. So that is just a quick summary of it, but there are different avenues for multiplication. People just need to first of all understand themselves, understand their income, understand their circumstances, and then use those as a motivation and not a deterrent. Because I think when we realize, well, oh, I'm feeding 7,000 people back home, that means I can't do it. No, you're looking at, okay, I'm feeding 7,000 people. What portion of my income needs to go there? How can I negotiate? How can I put in buffers to ensure that I'm not spending 90% of my income sending back home? Because there are a lot of people who are in debt because of black tax. And you're like, but can't you say no? And it's not saying no from a place of I don't like, I can't. It's more of, look, this is how much I am able to provide for you guys. This is how much I have set aside this month. Let us talk to the people that we are supporting, because people have this tendency, if people are depending on me, I cannot discuss with them. They must just receive what I give them. Or sometimes even the people that are depending on you, that are dictating to you how to spend your money. If people are depending on your money and you realize they have a relationship with your money, every relationship works through communication. You communicate, you negotiate, you know.
Yeah.
So I think maybe I'll end there, but there's so much to say.
Yeah,
Maybe
definitely.
I can just add one last thing to that black tax.
Definitely.
When people have relationship with your money, I don't understand that. And I do understand that your family may have invested in you and supported you along the way. They gave you the education you need. Some people were not even educated by their families, but for the fact that they were the only ones that went to school, and then they have a responsibility to go take care of everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that also, in fact, we've talked a lot about so many reasons why people are poor in Africa, but I think this is also a very critical part about it.
Yeah.
That we don't understand that the lack of contribution by every part of society, that we have some conversations about men who prefer their wives not to work.
I knew you were going there.
And, all of those kind of things. We are too poor in Africa for those kind of luxuries. We are too poor.
We need everyone in the workforce.
Imagine someone who...
there goes my thoughts of wanting to be a housewife.
Honestly,
we can't afford housewives.
We can't afford it, because that man who now has to take care of his own family and his wife's family and his wife's needs cannot now set up. Of course, he's living fine. He's feeding everybody that needs to be fed. But he cannot then venture into building a proper business. If he is building a business on the side, he has to always consider which part of his business needs to be sacrificed to feed these people who are choosing to work in that same organization. Because if he offers, I've heard of people who try to say, okay, let me give you this part of my work to do and I'll be paying you. And those family members will still be the ones messing things up for that person. So it means that we have a culture where we don't also, those who are dependent on others, some might even feel insulted when you tell them, can't you also contribute? They feel insulted by it, and they will tell the person, why not?
You're selfish.
You're selfish. Why can't you just do your
Provide
job?
For me. You're a man.
I mean, and these things are very sweet when we talk about them on social media.
Yeah.
But they are very practical issues that go on between family members that make sure that all of these things, we're saying we want Africa to change. We want the Black nation to change. But between ourselves, we are not actually changing. I think it's time to...
No, wait.
My voice is gone.
No. Your voice cannot go, because I think that's a really cool element. And I think you probably, if you've seen my videos on it, we cannot have a society that condones female docility just because men want power. I think that is one of the greatest problems that we're having in our community, where men find you working, making your own money, and then the moment they marry you, they're like, stay home, I'll provide for you. The amount of contribution you could have been making in society while you are there cleaning pots and cooking for somebody is then missing. That amount of development that the country needs, you are sitting there being told, well, you can't reason because you're a woman. You cannot open your mouth. You cannot talk because you must be a submissive wife. And therefore, and I think I find it really puzzling when somebody who's probably a policeman, security guard, somebody whose salary cannot like feed an entire nation is telling somebody who leave your job so that you can be a submissive wife.
Because it's
I'm
not
like,
it's not
what
only
kind
the
of
rich.
sense is that?
It's not only the rich African who has that same
mentality.
Even the
Even
person,
poor people.
even someone who he himself or the family, they are depending on someone else.
Yeah.
Will still tell his wife he's begging for food as a man. I'm just using that as an example. He's begging for food, and yet he tells his wife, "You can't work." I mean, isn't that the height of foolishness?
Yeah, you're trying to be a man.
So that's one problem on its own. So, and then there are those, we were talking about black tax. In that same line, there are people who they are not even telling them you cannot work. They're not even, nobody's stopping them from working, but they are just not going to work. And of course, Tomi mentioned limiting beliefs. There are people who work. There are limiting beliefs that most of us have about work also. That even if we wanted to contribute, we struggle. We'll struggle to contribute because of some of those limiting beliefs. For example, when I was starting out, someone told me once that, do you know you can earn X amount of money? I argued with them. I was like, I mean, I maybe somewhere in the future, I couldn't see it immediately happening, and they told me you need to stop this particular attitude about how you tell people about your work, offering free services to people. They were not happy with me having that kind of habit or behavior. And I was pissed when they told me that, because I'm like, I'm trying my best. I'm not even selling the free stuff. It's cheap. Nobody's buying it. So why should I increase my prices? Not until I took the message of the person and realized that, okay, this person is actually telling me that I'm worth much more than these things. And I am speaking to an audience that cannot appreciate what I'm offering.
Exactly.
So I was taking that message the wrong way. So until I did that, then my income changed. So there are different groups of people in this issue of black tax. Those who are just entitled, sitting at home and waiting for someone to bring them stuff. Those who think they've done all they can do, and so their limiting beliefs, they don't think there's anything else to do. Those beliefs, right? Then there are those who actually are being forced to remain poor. So those are like three different groups of people. One now needs to identify, which group am I? Is there someone forcing me not to contribute? Is the person I'm dependent on, that my child that I'm black taxing? So I know old people, like my parents' age mates, who are in some of the groups I am on, learning digital skills, learning to code, learning to do this and do that. They are not ready to die yet. But there are old people who, the minute they are 50 years and above, they already believe that they are done with this life. There's nothing they can earn money from. They can't earn from teaching other people their skills. They don't know how to use the internet. They don't want to learn. They feel like it's things for the youth, and so on and so forth. Those are some kinds of people. And those limiting beliefs, if someone knows that this is my problem, I have these limiting beliefs,
they don't see them as problems.
They don't even see them as problems. So I think we as communities how we can help is to help people see that that's a problem.
Yes.
You can't be depending on someone else and not doing anything to even
and they don't even have their life
improve
yet.
your own self, right? So that's one. Then those that are forcing those others to stay on, like without contributing, their wife, or again, there needs to be intervention in those cases, because some of those people are maybe not in the position to fight their partner.
And I think the hardest part about these things is they then, poke into the fabric of the relationship, because the man says, if you don't do this, I'm going to leave you, whatever the case is. Or they just start misbehaving, start cheating and stuff like that. And women are like, no, but if I stay home, he's
Then
going to
he's
be
going to be a
happy
good person.
because, I'm emasculating him when I'm doing this. He feels like I'm the man, so he needs to, I need to reduce myself so he
So
can
that he
have.
can
I
feel
mean, that means you're not a man
So,
if you need somebody to reduce themselves.
Basically, those are the issues where now communities need to intervene, because
Exactly.
sometimes we think the way to go, and which is common in social media, is the fire brigade approach. Your husband is evil, leave him, get out of that. He's a toxic person. We are all toxic in some sense, and that is one thing we refuse to recognize. Most of us have lived traumas that make us very toxic for one another. So when people now put a campaign around demonizing men or demonizing men, it's a problem.
Whether women who are submissive or women who are working.
The idea should be, how do we start intervening and creating dialogue with unreasonable people? Because most of the time, each of us thinks we are reasonable until our own problems surface.
Yeah.
I have my own places where I become unreasonable.
Yeah.
Tumi has her own places where she becomes unreasonable. But the problem is that when we are now unreasonable with ourselves, do we find people who can intervene and say, or do we find ways to mediate and say, listen, you have been unreasonable with your wife. You can do more with your life if you allow this woman flourish. You can do more with her life if she, is flourishing in the areas where she wants to flourish. Those two require mediation. Now, for the ones that are entitled, those other two I mentioned are about mediation. But for those that are entitled to your money, it's not like they don't have jobs of their own or the chance of getting a job. It's not like they don't know how to learn on their own, or you are forcing them not to learn. Those groups of people, there's no mediation required there.
And just cut them off.
You cut them off. Wait. I'm not saying cut them off as your family.
No, like
they
you
are
cut them
still
off from your money.
You cut them off from your money. People shouldn't have a relationship with other people's money. There's no bargaining that.
Babe, wait.
I can't come and be negotiating. I went to work today. I'm struggling to get an income. Then I'm going to come negotiate with somebody about how to spend my money. It's not going to happen. I'm going to be in control of my money. And that's one of the first things even financial therapy or whatever should do for people, is to first of all get them in control of their money.
Damilola.
And once someone else has a relationship with your money, you don't have a control. There's a difference between wait, hold on. There's a difference between I'm going to you say something, but I want to finish this. There's a difference between I am giving money to my family because I love my family, and my family has a relationship with my money. It's two different things.
Okay.
That relationship and tie must be broken first. Then you now have the healthy way to start navigating. How much can I now give you maybe in 3 months' time? Or if I see the effort you've made on your own, I can then contribute to it. Oh, you are making headway in this way. Okay, let me add to what you are doing. Oh, you saved this amount of money for yourself. Let me give you this part of the money you need for something. Those are not, you are not now taking ownership of somebody else's destiny. And sometimes we also have Messiah syndromes. We want to save everybody. Adults who cannot help themselves, they have their own destiny, they have their own future. You think it's your job. It's not the moment we start realizing that it's not our jobs to save everybody in our family. Some of them will suffer, some of them will, it's their destiny to suffer, and then they will grow from there. There are some that will never learn from suffering, but it's not your job as a human being to save another human being.
Baby.
So if they refuse to work on their own salvation, your contribution is useless.
They must work on their own salvation.
They must work on their own
Tripling
salvation. And then you can start contributing to it. But you can't be the main line of salvation for somebody. You can't be the main line of salvation for anybody. It's not healthy.
Okay, so wait.
I think we have used too much time.
Wait, let me clarify something.
Yeah.
When I said that there are people who have relationship with your money, because what you need to understand is certain relationships that we choose for ourselves, for instance, this union now, whether you like it or not, I have a relationship with your money. The children that are born out of this
have a relationship
with
course,
money.
those ones,
now,
yes.
This is where things get from. And the reason that you and I had a prenup was because we know that we're both entrepreneurs and our businesses' money would have relationship with each other. So if I go bankrupt, if we're American Community of Property, they will take your money and our children will starve, right? So that's why we then put things in place to know that there are people who, by law, have a relationship with our money, whether we want to find it comfortable.
No, there
or
are
not.
those ones. There are those
Yes.
ones, right?
So
my children.
So I wanted to make that.
No, of course, there's that clarification. There are people who, by law and even by your relation, actually have that relationship.
Yes.
I have a relationship with my parents' money if they had money. Because I'm their child. They brought me into this situation. I'm no longer in need of their money. But if they did have it, I would have a relationship with it. They cannot have a relationship with my money. I didn't bring them to this world. They cannot. They can share with me their aspirations and their plans to do something as adults. They have adult agency. That's why they don't seek my advice or counsel when they want to decide where to go. They don't seek my advice or counsel. They do whatever they have to do as adults. And so I can contribute to whatever it is they want to do as a child that loves them. But they don't have a right to my money. As a son who respects and loves his parents, I can once in a while reach out to them and say, oh, my parents, I love you and I want to do something. But they don't have a relationship with my money. But I can't then give birth to a child now and say my child doesn't have a relationship with my money. That would be foolishness. In fact, once you give birth to a child, you are responsible for that. Your money already now has another consumer.
I have a cousin.
It now has someone related to it. So, but I think that just summarizes that part.
So I just wanted.
So I do definitely. No, we are not. We are not. We are not.
No, but I wanted to clarify that I have a relationship with your money, and you must, own it with your.
The same way I have a relationship with your money is fine. We both have relationship to each other's money. That's the way it is. So, but you get the difference. People who are your village community, your friends back home, those people you grew up with, they don't have that same relationship. You don't owe them anything. You didn't go to ask them out. You didn't ask them to live with you. You are not sleeping on the same bed at night and making decisions together. So you do not owe them that. And we need to, that one, you can't negotiate it with people. You can't help. You need to just get people to a point where they are strong enough in their understanding of this truth that nobody else aside from your immediate family has a relationship with your money. Nobody else. Everybody else can be a beneficiary of it. Everyone else can be a beneficiary of it, but they do not have that relationship with it.
Family, and a lot of people would then say how you have described your family, as in you and I and our children. That's a sort of a Western way of looking at family. How we look at family as Black people is not you, I, our children.
We also have that in my culture. Our family is actually the people we call extended family.
So when I sit down with people to do financial planning, I'm not looking at them and their children, because I know even if I tell them, Hori, your money is for your nuclear family, they would still send money to grandma at home. So the reason we include them in such things, and that's why Black Tech is a huge discussion in South Africa, is because we still have that, right? So we still have for instance, my grandmother can call me now and tell me she wants meat, right? She can call my mom and say she wants meat. My mom can call me now and tell me. So it's those kind of things, and that's where we now learn about boundaries and then discuss how we are able to contribute. And that's why I wanted to emphasize the idea that you then speak to these people, because when we were growing up, I grew up in a family home with my grandmother's house. Abud Bani was there. That's not my biological brother. He has his mom. His mom is my mom's sister. So basically, we all grew up together. When his mom is coming, month end, he comes with clothes for everybody, not just her children. Of course, the children will have more, right? When my mom comes home, also, when she gives me money, she was also giving my brothers money. Not because she's duty bound, whatever the case is, but that is how we have defined family to be. And that's why when we do financial planning, we take those things into consideration. Of course, there's a place of people who are super entitled, telling you that, you can't. I mean, there was someone who was told, you can't take your children to private school and not buy us groceries. And I'm like, whoa, who are you? I must take my children out. So there are those people, there are those extremes. But the idea of family also cannot now just let's sever that connection and say.
But that's you see, that's why I separated the conversation. Like I said,
no, I just wanted to make it clear.
There are people who you still care about, and you definitely need to care about them, right? But when it gets to them being entitled to your resources,
no, entitlement is their problem.
Then you need to first of all cut that tie. You need to first let them know that, see, you can't collect money without my permission.
Yeah.
It's not like I owe you.
Yeah.
Right? But this is what I'm going to do.
Of course.
And sometimes, even our parents did that with us when we were growing up, like when we started becoming adults. They make you realize that now you're an adult. I don't owe you anymore. I've raised you to the point at which I can raise you. So now anything I do for you is just out of, I'm still your parent. I can do it for you and all of those kind of things. And children too have to get, wind of the entitlement to parents' care.
And parents need to be wind too.
And parents too.
Hey.
Yeah, that's the thing. So the winning process of taking people away, it's like a child that needs to be taken away from breast milk. It's not going to be easy. But you first of all have to just get that cut away, first of all. That, listen, this bond doesn't exist. Now, this is the only thing you're going to be getting. Know that if you like, you can be angry with it. You can be angry, you can hate me, you can. And that's the thing, that's what most people fear.
But I'm going to lose my family.
Nobody will love me.
If you see
and all of those things. But I say there's nothing you do in this life that doesn't take risk. Be ready to risk losing it all. And most of the time, people who are entitled, the only thing they listen to is explosions.
Yeah.
When you are ready to lose it all, they start to listen. So you need to get yourself to that place. But anyways, let's not extend this.
We've been saying good stuff.